Chapter 31, Either it dies, or we die. The dire wolves were helpless against William's and Ella's mad rush. Helen's golden threads would decapitate any wolf that tried to attack William from his blind spot. With an expert like her protecting him, William didn't have to worry about getting hurt. Of course, he and Ella steered clear of the centennial and millennial beasts. They only fought the wolves along the outside perimeter. Although they were feeling confident, they were not cocky. Helen and Owen nodded their heads in appreciation. Not every 10-year-old boy would get the opportunity to fight in a beast hide and remain unscathed. Gained EXP points, 46,176. Gained EXP points, 70,131. Gained EXP points, 65,495. William was about to nudge Ella, to head a bit deeper in the wolf tide when a few golden strings wrapped around the two of them. Helen didn't want William and Ella to get carried away, so she decided to drag them back to where Owen was standing. Also, she noticed that the tide of battle was starting to get serious from now on. Majority of the small fries had been dealt with. The real battle was about to begin. Young master, things are going to get a bit dangerous, Helen said. Stay here for the time being. William obediently nodded his head. He had already gained decent experience points, so he decided to listen to his auntie Helen. At that right moment, the wolf tide suddenly had a drastic change. The wolf's eyes glowed red. The Black Sea had now a smattering of red dots and looked more sinister compared to before. Berserk call, Owen muttered. As expected, this is gonna be ugly. The wolves charged at the three teams who were attacking their leaders. At first, Marcus and the rest were taking it easy. Although the wolves had the advantage in numbers, they were more than capable of dealing with them. The centennial beasts, although strong, was not something that they couldn't handle. They were about to completely incapacitate them when a powerful howl descended on the battlefield. Immediately, the two centennial beasts' countenance changed. They entered a berserk state which multiplied their powers threefold. The same could be said for the rest of the wolves that were currently attacking them without fear for their lives. This is why I hate fighting against millennial beasts with lightning elements, James cursed. These critters are full of dirty tricks. It was at that time when a flash of purple lightning bolt streaked towards James' direction. The old man used his giant axe to block the blow like a shield. However, it still sent him hurtling a few meters in the air. Flare explosion! Mordred roared as he pressed both of his palms on the ground. All the wolves within 15 square meters around him were turned to ashes. Hey! Are you forgetting that I'm here? Jekyll yelped in anger. He was in the middle of the battle formation and keeping close watch on James and Mordred's situation. Mordred's sudden attack caught him by surprise because he was distracted by the millennial beast's purple lightning. Relax, this little blaze couldn't possibly kill you, Mordred replied with a shrug. I'm not worried about your puny fire killing me. I'm worried about my clothes. Jekyll snapped. I just bought this from the capital a week ago and now it's ruined. Just put it on my tab. FCK. What tab are you talking about? You still haven't paid the debt you owed me and it's been 4 years already. You two bastards, stop arguing and help me. James roared. He wanted to use his axe to slap the two arguing numbskulls who had completely forgotten that they were dealing with a walking calamity. If not for the fact that he was surrounded by hundreds of berserk dire wolves, he would have already beaten the two idiots to kingdom come. The battle continued for an hour and most of the dire wolves had been dealt with. Now, only less than 200 wolves remained of the once formidable wolf tide. The two centennial beasts were also lying on the ground. They were not dead, but they no longer held any threat whatsoever. Although the outcome seemed to be leaning on the side of Lant, everyone had dire expressions on their faces. William noticed this as well and wondered why everyone felt that way. Aren't we already winning? William asked. How come I sense that everyone's mood has turned for the worst? You have good eyes, little Will. Owen chuckled. Indeed. If we were just to look at the numbers then this battle can already be considered a victory. However, until the millennial beast retreats, the victors and losers are still undecided. Retreat? William frowned. Why would we want that oversized wolf to retreat? Wouldn't it be better if it is killed? Of course. Owen nodded. However, millennial beasts with the lightning element have a very disgusting ability. They have this skill called Storm Annihilation. This is a suicide skill that is capable of destroying everything. The last time this skill was used, an entire capital disappeared from the face of the continent //o/. Hi yoke. Williams almost choked on his saliva when he heard Owen's explanation. Destroying an entire capital? Is that a joke? However, one glance was enough to tell William that Owen was not lying to him. He also noticed that his grandfather, and the rest were only trying to threaten the beast and not fighting it head-on. I'm very worried, Helen muttered. This is an old monster and it might not really care whether it lived or died. Owen, we have to prepare for the worst. Owen nodded his head and began chanting. If the beast was really going to use its suicide move, he would erect a barrier and try to protect everyone. However, he was not confident that he would succeed. The best case scenario was for the millennial beast to leave on its own. James decapitated the last dire wolf with ease. His giant axe was now soaked in the blood of its victims. The millennial beast watched all of these with indifference. It didn't really care whether its pack died or not. They had already been banished from the Forbidden Land, and there was no going back for them. It raised its head and howled a mournful cry. James and the faces of everyone in the valley immediately paled. They understood what the beast wanted to do. It wanted to have a life and death battle with them. Can I go home now? Jekyll asked. I remember that I still have things to do. Everyone glared at Jekyll, but they didn't say anything. In fact, they were thinking the same. They were cursing the millennial beast in their hearts for being stubborn. All of them wanted to scream and raise their middle fingers at the same time. If you want to die, then just die by yourself. Bastard. Sir, what are we going to do? Marcus asked. Although he tried to hide it, the worry on his face was evident. We need to end this quickly, James replied. Either it dies, or we die. Owen and Helen also made their move. They left William alone and headed to assist their comrades to battle. It was not because they didn't care for William's safety. On the contrary, they made their decision because they cared for everyone's safety. If the beast isn't killed as soon as possible, then the entirety of Lant would be wiped out from the face of the continent. Simply put, there was no safe place to run or hide. Chapter 33, Storm Annihilation Part 1. James gripped the giant war axe in his hand firmly. This axe had accompanied him in many battles and had witnessed his glorious days. He glanced at his son Mordred. This son of his was a very stable individual and had managed to gain the support of everyone in Lant. The Ainsworth family was a dying clan. There were only 5 of them left on the continent. James, Morgan, Mordred, Matthew, Mordred's son, and William. If he failed to finish off this monster, only 2 of their bloodline would be left. He, Mordred, and his grandson, William, would die alongside this calamity. James clenched his teeth. This was something he didn't want to happen. He couldn't allow it to happen. Failure was not an option. We only have one shot, James said with a determined expression. No matter what happens, do not let it use storm annihilation. I don't care how you do it, as long as you do it. Do I make myself clear? Everyone present nodded their heads. Words need not to be spoken. Even the always smiling Jekyll was no longer smiling. The dentist had already taken off his glasses, which meant that he was now going to get serious. The 10-meter-tall wolf charged and tendrils of lightning danced around its body. Mordred stomped on the ground and punched the air in front of him. Fire Dragon Assault. A fire dragon emerged in front of Mordred and flew towards the beast with an earth-shaking roar. The 4 horns of the wolf boss glowed. It then shot out 2 streaks of purple lightning towards the apparition that dared to challenge its existence. As the lightning and dragon crashed against each other, a massive shockwave shook the battlefield. Mordred, Marcus, and 2 others were blown away due to their close proximity to the area of explosion. A giant dust cloud emerged and blocked everyone's line of sight. However, even though they couldn't see their opponent, they could feel its mighty presence. A purple figure emerged from the dust cloud and charged in their direction. The wolf boss was not even fazed by Mordred's full power attack. This clearly showed the difference between their powers. James rushed to meet the wolf head-on. There were no signs of fear on his face. Instead, one could see his unwavering determination for victory. Die! James growled as the muscles in his body bulged. The axe in his hand swept the air in a mad strike. The wolf didn't meet James' attack head-on and dodged to the side. As a creature that had arrived at its rank, it had the ability to gauge the strength of an individual. It knew that James' attack wasn't as simple as it seemed. The axe missed its target and slammed into the ground. The ground was split apart, creating a 10-meter-long fissure. James didn't stop his attack and delivered a backhand strike to the sly wolf who tried to do a sneak attack. A howl of pain escaped the wolf's lips as James' fist hit its target. Everyone knew that it was a crucial time, so Helen joined the battle, leaving William in Owen's care. Golden threads wrapped around one of the wolf's legs and held it in place. Now! Helen shouted. Marcus and the rest unleashed their ultimate attacks at the same time. Fire Blast! Steel Hammer! Earth Spike! Windstorm! The combined attacks fell upon a purple screen of light that covered the wolf's body. This ability was called Light Screen. It had the power of elemental attacks. Although it didn't give the beast immunity to the elements, it decreased their effect, allowing the wolf boss to endure the barrage of spells that fell mercilessly on its body. It's not enough. James muttered as he jumped into the air to unleash another powerful strike. The wolf growled and pulled on the golden threads that were wrapped around its leg. Since the golden threads were connected to Helen's fingers, the woman was pulled along with her ability. The wolf sent her flying to block James' strike mid-air. With a roar of annoyance, James dispelled his attack and caught Helen in his embrace. The wolf knew that this was a good opportunity, so it jumped into the air to swallow both of them whole. Unfortunately, it underestimated the resourcefulness of the humans around it. With a wave of her arm, Ava pulled James and Helen in her direction. What followed next was a shrill shriek that pierced the air as Blitz and John made their move. Using its maximum speed, the hawk fearlessly dove towards the wolf who was in mid-air. The collision resulted in a howl of pain coming from the wolf. It fell on the ground with a crash. Blitz flapped its wings to soar back into the sky. Traces of blood could be seen on its talons, which proved that its attack was effective. The wolf stood up and roared in fury. One of its eyes was bleeding and it made everyone regain their courage. However, before anyone could do a follow-up attack, an intense flash of light gathered around its body. Damn! It's going to use Storm Annihilation! James cursed. Everyone, brace yourselves! Blitz caught James and Helen with its talons and flew upwards. Everyone else ran behind Owen as the Life Magus prepared his strongest barrier to fend off the wolf's suicide attack. He had already positioned himself in a defensive position with the town of Lant at his back. He would do everything in his power to protect his comrades and the townsfolk from this full-powered last resort by a millennial beast. Blessed Goddess, Redeemer of souls, in my time of need I come to you. Renew my strength so I might live in peace, Owen chanted. I plead this of you as your faithful child, O brightest light. Absolve me with your glorious grace. Protect those who worship your excellence. Aegis. A golden barrier of light that was 30 meters tall burst out in front of Owen. It spread out towards the side until it was almost a kilometer long. The Aegis spell was Owen's strongest defensive ability, but it wasn't supposed to be used this way. At most, the Aegis would form a small barrier that would absolutely fend off any attack. However, Owen stretched the barrier to its limit. Although it wouldn't be as sturdy as the concentrated barrier, he hoped that it would be enough to minimize the damage of the storm of annihilation. This was the best he could do for his comrades and the people of Lant. Just as everyone was bracing themselves for the millennial beast's suicide attack, they noticed something moving towards the thunder-horned wolf from behind its back. Chapter 34, Storm Annihilation Part 2. It was moving very quickly, but everyone present was an expert in battle. When James saw who it was, his heart almost broke into pieces. The old man's shout was deafening. However, William didn't hear it. His concentration was locked on the glowing wolf in front of him. The moment the wolf initiated its storm annihilation, William had also made his move. He ordered Ella to use quick attack in order to close the gap at the fastest speed possible. Although the storm annihilation was truly a powerful move, it was not something that could be used in an instant. The wolf needed to channel all of its life force and energy into its beast core before this ultimate attack could be unleashed. However, who was William? He was someone that had the help of his system. Before the battle started, the system had already analyzed how to block the storm annihilation. William knew that it was very risky, but he still decided to do it. Quoting what his grandfather said, either the wolf died, or everyone would die. Since death was already a foregone conclusion, why not struggle until the last moment? When William was only 10 meters away from the wolf, he channeled his magic to his staff and aimed it at a certain location. Glacial Lance. A 5-meter-long lance that shone like crystals shot forward with a vengeance. This was the strongest spell that was currently available in William's Ice Mage skill tree. Glacial Lance, 10/10. 50 mana points. Hurls a 5-meter-long lance of ice to your enemy dealing piercing frost damage. Piercing strike increased by 50%. Damage dealt is equivalent to intelligence x 10. Deals 5x damage to frozen enemies. Has a chance to freeze enemies except boss monsters. William was able to unlock it due to the experience points he had gained from the earlier battle. Simply put, this was William's last hurrah and he bet his life on this desperate last strike. Everyone watched with bated breath as the lance drew near the wolf's body. All of them knew that this wouldn't change the current situation. Once the wolf initiated its suicide attack, nothing could stop it. Many people had tried in the past, and all of them had one ending. They had been incinerated by heavenly lightning until they turned into ashes. Contrary to everyone's expectations, they saw and heard something truly unexpected. The wolf yelped as its massive body bolted off the ground. The glacial lance had embedded itself in the wolf's body, which made it lose its concentration. Everyone couldn't believe their eyes. What had they just seen? Once the wolf activated the storm annihilation, it covered its body with a light screen. This reduced the effectiveness of all attacks by half. It was also why no one had thought that William would succeed in his attack. Earlier, Mordred and the others had also unleashed their full-powered attacks. However, the wolf endured their attacks with grace. No //oh/. They never believed for a second that William's spell, Glacial Lance, could do better. Compared to the veteran's ultimate moves, William's spell was not particularly strong. Although it looked cool, its power was not even a fifth of Mordred's full-powered fire blast. How can this be? Owen asked. What's going on? No one answered his question. None of them could explain the unbelievable sight in front of them. Actually, the adults had forgotten one thing. Even though the wolf had used a light screen, there were some attacks that couldn't be endured even if your body was made of steel. For example, if you were to be hit in a certain place, the damage would be multiplied astronomically. Indeed. William didn't think of anything complicated. He used his glacial lance to impale the only place that would bring the wolf to its knees. What place was that exactly? Ahem, it was none other than the wolf's B***ed hole. Had. Humans could endure punch and kicks, but if that place was suddenly poked by a long, hard, pointy, and tapered stick, they would definitely be in a world of pain. Of course, there were some experts that were able to take such penetrating attacks by cucumbers with grace. Unfortunately, the millennial beast was not one of them. All of their attention turned back to focus on William and Ella, who were about to have a head-on collision with the millennial beast. Ice Spike. Ice spikes materialized on the ground in front of William, creating an icicle bridge. Mama Ella. Horn assault. William ordered. Me. Ella ran over the icicle bridge as her horn glowed bloody red. This was currently her strongest move, but it was a move that couldn't be underestimated. Thanks to Owen's buffs, Ella's strength stat had surpassed 300. William had maxed out this skill at level 10. Its damage output was Ella's strength stat multiplied by 7. Right now, it was as strong as Mordred's Fire Dragon Assault. After channeling its life force and energy to its magic core, the millennial beast was at its weakest. The two bloody horns slammed into the wolf's forehead with a resounding clap. A dying howl permeated the battlefield as the wolf's massive body fell to the ground. Its eyes looked at William and Ella with bitterness. It was unresident. It planned to bring all of these insects with him to the afterlife, but it was foiled by this little kid whom it treated as livestock. Soon, its eyes became dull and lifeless as it breathed its last. The battle was finally over. Everyone stared at the boy who was mounted on top of the Angorian goat with burning eyes. The boy, on the other hand, had a dazed look on his face as he stared at the dead millennial beast in front of him. That's my grandson! James shouted with pride. He's just like me when I was younger. Ha 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 ha. As expected of my grandson. The hawk shrieked and glanced at his master. He gave John the "can I drop this old fool" expression as the latter only chuckled and shook his head. John stared at the boy on the ground and nodded his head in appreciation. This youngster is very promising. William wasn't aware of the burning looks that the people were giving him. The reason why he was in a daze was because of the notification that had appeared in front of him. Ding! Gained EXP, 1,200,000. Congratulations! You have slayed a millennial beast. Special monster first kill bonus EXP, 500,000. You have acquired Wolf Slayer title. You have acquired millennial grade beast core. Ice Mage job class had reached its max level. Would you like to advance to the next job class? Yes/no. Mama Ella, we struck it big time. Me. William wanted to laugh out loud, but he was feeling lightheaded. The adrenaline rush was now leaving his body and it made him feel very weak. If not for the fact that he was firmly mounted on Ella's back, he might have slipped sideways and fallen to the ground. With a loud thud, James landed beside Ella and happily lifted William from her back. Ha 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 ha. Although you were not as awesome as me when I was your age, you still did well. James laughed as he spun the boy round and round. Me. Ella gave James a grumpy stare. If she could only speak, she would have already nagged at James for handling her baby in a rough manner. Gramps, put me down, I'm feeling dizzy, William pleaded. HMP. Fine. James placed William on Ella's back and looked at him with satisfaction. How could he not be satisfied? His grandson was so bad *SS. His grandson was able to stop a skill that was said to be unstoppable. No one had succeeded in the past. Only his grandson was able to achieve such a feat. This was something that he could brag about to his friends when they met again for their joint exploration in 3 months' time. Chapter 35, Looking for a Second Opinion. A day passed after the great battle against the wolf tide. The village of Lant was in a festive atmosphere because they had narrowly escaped a calamity. Unfortunately, some other towns and villages didn't share their happiness. Several messenger birds had arrived at the Ainsworth residence and the majority of them brought bad news. James was frowning as he read the latest letter that had arrived. After a while, he heaved a deep sigh as he carefully placed the letter on the right side of the table. The town of Fuchsia had been overrun by the beast tide. There were no survivors, James announced. This makes it the third town that got wiped out, Owen commented. Those poor souls. This beast tide really came without warning. Helen grimaced. If the defenders of Lant were just a bit weaker, this town would have suffered the same fate as the others. Everyone in the room silently agreed with Helen's deductions. If none of them were here, this town would have already been in ruins. Let's wait for John's reconnaissance mission, Marcus suggested. We can make our move once we get his detailed report. Do you think it's a good idea to open Lant to accept refugees? Sean asked. This was a question that was hard to answer. Lant was a peaceful place and they liked to keep it that way. If refugees were to swarm into this town then a certain balance would be broken. This was not something they wanted to happen. However, could they really turn away the people who were in dire need of help? Those who had lost everything? Although none of the people inside the room were innocent, and all their hands were covered in blood, they still had a shred of humanity in them. If push came to shove, they would still extend their hands to offer these refugees assistance. After they resisted the wolf tide, the town of Lant had entered a state of emergency. No one was allowed to leave town, except for the few elites that were responsible for Lant's safety. The wolves on the battlefield were currently being cleaned up and turned into wolf jerky. This was their way of helping the refugees get something to eat, if and when they arrived in their small town. The thousands of wolves would be enough to feed a lot of people. As for the centennial and millennial beasts, they didn't intend to share them with anyone. They were magical beasts that would help nurture the next generation and only the original residents would get the privilege of eating their meat. Their fur, claws, and horns could be used to forge weapons and armors. It was cutie a pity that the 2 centennial beasts committed suicide when they saw that their leader had perished. William could have gained a few levels for his shepherd job class if they had survived. Even so, the boy didn't think too much about it. 2 centennial beasts couldn't compare to a millennial beast. If William would have to choose between them, he would pick the latter any day. The atmosphere inside the conference room was heavy. Almost all the towns and villages near Lant had either turned to ruins, or had been wiped out completely from the face of the continent. John and his animal companion Blitz decided to do a reconnaissance mission in order to get a better understanding of the current situation. Lant was located at the western edges of the Hellan Kingdom. It was quite far from the capital city, and it would take at least 5 to 6 days to reach it if you were to travel using a flying beast like a griffin. For now, let's wait for John's return, James said after organizing his thoughts. If any refugees arrive in Lant, we can allow them to stay in the town hall for the time being. That place can house up to 200 people. Everyone nodded in agreement. After a few more discussions, everyone left to return to their duties. James sighed for the umpteenth time as he stared at the ceiling. I wonder how the king will react to this calamity. William looked outside the window of his room. The battle against the millennial beast had taught him a lot. He had to admit that it was the second most dangerous experience that he had encountered in his current lifetime. The scale of the battle was very different from the controlled environment inside the dungeon. Inside the dungeon, William had the opportunity to escape. However, in the outside world, there were no second chances. The boy opened his status page and checked the title that he had acquired after defeating the Millennial Beast. Wolf Slayer. Time to save Little Red Riding Hood. Increase attack against wolf-type monsters by 50%. Strength plus 3. William gained a lot from that battle. His Ice Mage job class reached max level. Not only that, he was able to unlock the skill Chantless Casting. This was a skill that William had always wanted. It allowed him to use spells without having to chant them out loud. Now, he had several options in front of him. The first option was to level his Shepherd job class. The second one was to take the next step and advance his Ice Mage to a stronger class. William opened the job advancement menu. There were several choices for him to choose from, but the majority of them were locked. There were even some that were unknown. Ice Wizard. Elemental Lord, locked. Battle Mage, locked. Magic Swordsman, locked. Arcane Ranger, locked. Cryo Lancer, locked. The system told him that the jobs with question marks were known as prestige classes. According to the system, these classes required chance encounters and extreme luck to acquire. William didn't think much about it because he already had a prestige class waiting for him to unlock. It was none other than the Disciple of Thunder. Its requirements were very simple. You need to get 2 job classes to reach their max level. It was a very straightforward requirement and William only needed to max 1 more job class in order to unlock it. The basic job classes like Swordsman, Archer, Spearman, Mage, etc., needed to reach job level 40 in order to advance to the next job class. The only question on William's mind right now was, which job class should he choose next? The Shepherd job class was his permanent main class. If he wanted to maximize both worlds, leveling this job class would bring him the most benefits. However, William was very tempted to switch the Ice Mage job class to one of the other classes as well. According to the system, once you reach the max level of a certain class, you would be able to add 1 single skill to your list of permanent skills. What did this mean? Simply put, if William were to swap the Ice Mage with one of the other job classes, he could choose 1 skill from the Ice Mage class to add to his main skill slot. For example, even if he chose the Swordsman as his next job class, he would still be able to use Glacial Lance if he wanted to. He could also choose Chantless Casting, Ice Armor, Ice Wall, Mana Regeneration, etc. Having 1 permanent skill from a job class was a major boon to William's repertoire. Battle Mage and Magic Swordsman sound cool, William muttered as he looked at these 2 job classes. Although they were still locked, William could see their job requirements. Battle Mage. Might and magic are at your disposal. Who said that a mage couldn't fight in close combat? Requirement. Any mage job class level 40. Monk job class level 40. No./O/. Magic Swordsman. Perfect combination of sword and magic. Nothing is too hot or too cold to those who wield both powers in his hands. Any mage job class level 40. Swordsman job class level 40. William scratched his head continuously. He couldn't make up his mind. The problem with multi-classing was that it took a lot of time to max the level of his job class. The Wolf Tide was a special event that wouldn't happen too often. William knew that killing a millennial beast was not an easy thing to do. If not for the fact that the one he fought was greatly weakened, he wouldn't even stand a chance in killing it. Look for beast tides? That was a very stupid idea. Although the people of Lant were surprisingly strong, he didn't want another beast tide to head in their direction. 1 step at a time. William sighed. I don't need to rush. Maxing 1 job class is already good in my current age. William suddenly thought about his ex-fiancée, Rebecca. They said that she was a genius born every 200 years. If the young girl knew that he had already become a full-fledged ice mage, what would she think? What would her mother, Agatha, and her master, Eleanor, think? The corner of William's lips curled up into a smile. No good. I am feeling narcissistic again. He shook his head in order to clear his thoughts. What he needed to do now was to decide which job class he should prioritize. Should I advance to Ice Wizard or go for the basic job classes? Arg. Deciding is a pain. William scratched his head for the umpteenth time. I think I need to ask Mama Ella for advice. Maybe she can give me a second opinion. Chapter 36, William's Naming Sense. William headed towards the back of their residence where the goat pen was located. Right now, Ella was looking after the goats to make sure that they behaved. Mama Ella, I need your help. Me. It's about this. Ella listened to William's dilemma. The boy pointed out the pros and cons of choosing a job class. After a 15-minute explanation, William looked expectantly at his wise and dependable mama. Me. I also think that this is the best option. Thank you Mama Ella. Me. William happily hugged the Angorian goat and brushed her head with his hand. What Ella told him was indeed the most ideal choice. System, I need you to do something for me, William said inside his mind. How may I be of service? I want to change the settings for my experience points. I want to allocate future gains to the Shepherd job class. Acknowledged. Setting has been successfully changed. Thank you, William said with a smile. You're welcome, the system replied before going into silent mode. After William had reached job level 40 in his Ice Mage job class, the system's AI had also gained an upgrade. While its voice was still monotonous, William felt that it was more intelligent compared to before. After getting over his problem, William decided to tackle another one. He looked at the 13 goats that had survived the battle against the dire wolves. William had already had a good talk to Ella and both of them agreed that they couldn't allow the same thing to happen again. Because of this, William decided to strengthen the goats as well. How would he do that? The answer is very simple. He planned to bring them all inside the goblin crypt. But, there was an even more pressing matter that he had to attend to. Should I call them 01, 02, 03, 04, etc.? William muttered. No. I shouldn't do that. Naming kids shouldn't be taken lightly. William could still remember the faces of his classmates whenever they were teased due to their names. Some of them even cursed their parents silently for being too casual in their naming sense. The boy didn't want the same thing to happen to his own children, so he made a vow that he would take naming them seriously. Right now, William was still a boy and certainly didn't have any children. However, these goats could be considered as his children since he was the one who raised them. Because of this, he was at a loss on what to do. Maybe I can call them Freedom, Justice, Strike, Destiny, Impulse, Stargazer, Atlas. William crossed his arms over his chest as he tried to remember the names of his favorite G** and dams. No //o/. Me. Sorry, Mama Ella. I was just joking. Me. William sighed as he laid on top of the hay that was bundled up at the side of the pen. He watched the clouds pass by, while Ella laid down beside him. Suddenly, William had a eureka moment. The boy stood up from the hay and motioned for the goats to line up in front of him. Today, I will formally recognize you as the members of my herd, William said with a serious expression. Because of this, I decided to bestow you names. Me. The goats cheered in unison. After the battle, they had already gained enough intelligence to understand William's words. Okay, let's start with you. William pointed at the goat at the far left of the formation. From now on, your name will be Aslan. Me. Next. The goat right next to Aslan took 2 steps forward. Your name will be Baldur. Me. Next. Baldur returned to his position and the next goat stepped forward. Your name will be Kronos. Me. Next. Your name will be Deadless. Me. You're a girl. William gave an awkward cough as he thought of a suitable name for a girl. Alright, your name will be Dawn. Me. It took William less than 10 minutes to give all the goats their names. Aslan, Baldur, Kronos, Dawn, Echo, Flynn, Griffin, Hades, Io, Jed, Keith, Levi, Mir. 9 boys, and 4 girls. These were the surviving members of William's herd. He looked at them with a determined expression. It was at that moment that William started to form his own small army. An army that would support him until the end of time. Ella stood by his side and nodded her head in satisfaction. She liked the names that William chose for her comrades. James, who was secretly observing William from afar, looked at this scene with a smile on his face. He had a feeling that his grandson would definitely make the southern continent a much more interesting place to live in. Later that night. I have good news to tell everyone, Mordred said with a big smile on his face. He then glanced at his beautiful wife which made Anna blush. I'm pregnant, Anna announced after Mordred's urging. Congratulations, Aunt Anna. William clapped his hands. I'm now going to have a little sister. James, on the other hand, roared in laughter as he patted Mordred's arm repeatedly. You did well, son. I don't mind if you keep giving me grandchildren. The more the better. James laughed. Father, my figure will disappear if I give birth to many children, Anna commented. It's fine, Anna, James replied. I'll take care of your kids for you. Everyone could tell that James was truly happy with the news. William remembered that his grandpa told him that their bloodline was too few. This was perhaps the main reason why James found the news to his liking. After congratulating Anna, the family enjoyed their dinner. Anna's and Mordred's eldest son, Matthew was not around. He was currently studying at the Royal Academy in the capital of the Hellan Kingdom. He was the next in line to take over Mordred's position as the overseer of Lant. Because of this, he needed to learn a lot of things in order to improve the living conditions in their territory. Matthew thought that it was best if he studied in the Royal Academy, so that he could help his parents in the future. I also have a bit of news to share everyone, William said after dinner ended. From time to time, I will be sleeping with the goats in the goat pen every night. They were traumatized by what happened. I need to be there so that they will feel at ease. Okay, James replied. Just make sure to stay inside Lant. Although the chance of another beast tide heading our way is slim, the possibility still exists. Don't go out sneaking outside of our territory, understood? Understood. William nodded his head. He really had no intention of sneaking out of Lant. All he wanted to do was to stay with the goats and do a little experiment. Chapter 37, The Dungeon Raid Part 1. Mama Ella, are you ready? Me. William nodded his head and went to Ella's status page. After defeating the millennial beast, Ella had also reached the max level of an Angorian goat. In order to advance, she needed to evolve. However, the system made an interesting discovery. After Ella evolved, she could still return to her previous form which was the Angorian goat. William was very happy with this outcome because he had grown fond of his Mama Ella's current form. He had seen Ella's evolutionary form and it was quite intimidating. No //o/. Would you like to evolve Ella to become the Angorian war ibex? Yes/no. William chose yes and immediately, Ella transformed into a 2-meter tall Angorian war ibex. The 2 huge back curving horns on her head were 5 feet long, 1.524 meters, and gave her an intimidating bearing. Although her white coat still looked comfortable and fluffy, it was in fact, as sturdy as the lightweight metal armor that adventurers and mercenaries usually wore. Overall, Ella's evolution gave her outstanding strength and physical defense. Just like the name of her race suggested, she was a beast that was born for war. The goats, who were inside the goat shed, looked at her with sparkling eyes. With a glance, William could tell that they were all looking forward to evolving just like Ella. Me. Ella raised her head proudly. It was her way to encourage the goats to do their best to become stronger. She had the "if I can do it, you can do it too" expression on her face, which made the goats stomp their feet in excitement. Me. 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 The goats replied happily as if to tell her that they would evolve as well. William approached Ella with a big smile on his face. This was what Ella wanted. She wanted to become stronger in order to protect William, and her goal had been met. However, both William and Ella knew that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning, and the journey to the peak was still a long way to go. William checked Ella's stats and the smile on his face widened. Ella's evolution had given her a massive boost in her status points. Her previous form and her current form were like heaven and earth. Name, Ella. Race, Angorian War Ibex. Level 1. Hit points, 2000/2000. Mana, 800/800. Strength, 50. Agility, 80. Vitality, 50. Intelligence, 40. Dexterity, 30. Current EXP, 0/400. Mama Ella, congratulations. William hugged her neck. Me. Ella replied. She then rested her chin on William's shoulder and closed her eyes. They stayed like that for a few minutes before William reluctantly took a step back. Although the night was still young, there were still things that they needed to do. If there is any among you that wish to leave a peaceful life, then you can go to that side, William said and pointed to his right. I will not force any of you to endanger yourselves. I'll be completely honest. I cannot guarantee your safety. I don't know what kind of foes we are going to face in the future. All I know is that they will be stronger than the dire wolves that you had faced yesterday. The chances of you guys dying is high. Do you still want to follow me to the unknown? Me. The goats replied in unison. Perhaps due to what they experienced, the goats' desire to grow stronger had superseded their desire to live a peaceful life. Very well. William nodded. Let's all go and conquer the goblin crypt together. Me. William activated the ring of conquest and a blinding light enveloped everyone inside the goat shed. A few seconds later, they found themselves on the 10th floor of the goblin crypt. Is this what you wanted to show me, Father? Mordred asked. Yes, James replied. William is still young and there are things that he cannot do. What you and I can do for him is to give him our full support from the shadows. Mordred glanced at the goat shed with a calm expression. Understood, Father. Good. James nodded his head and walked back towards the house. William is following the footsteps of his father. I just hope that he will be able to overcome the challenges that are waiting for him. The father and son pair disappeared under the cover of darkness. The beast tides were still active in the western part of the Hellan kingdom. Both of them still had things to do, and, among them was to ensure that William's secret would be kept for as long as possible. 11th floor Goblin Crypt. Me. The Angorian goats charged at the two hobgoblins as a team. Although the hobgoblins were stronger than the dire wolves, they were no match against 13 crazed goats who were out for blood. Ella was the leader of the herd, but she just stood at the back and watched as her subordinates trampled the hobgoblins with ease. The goats were divided into two teams. One of the teams was led by Aslan, while the other was led by Kronos. Team, Alpha. Leader, Aslan. Members, Baldur, Dawn, Echo, Flynn, Griffin, Hades. Team, Omega. Leader, Kronos. Members, Io, Jed, Keith, Levi, Mir. One team against one hobgoblin. This was the strategy that William had devised after entering the 11th floor. He reasoned that the goats needed to work as a team if they wanted to advance to the lower floors of the goblin crypt. The hobgoblins on the 11th floor came in pairs. It was the perfect training ground for the goats to test their teamwork. EXP gained 220. EXP gained 220. William checked the notification and nodded his head. He had already anticipated that the experience points would be greatly reduced due to the number of participants in the battle. However, he didn't care. He was not in a hurry to gain massive experience points. The important thing right now was to train his army and polish their battle formations. Name, Ella. Race, Angorian War Ibex. Level 2. Hit points, 2000/2000. Mana, 800/800. Current EXP, 40/922. William smiled as he saw his mama Ella gain a level. He then added the 3 stat points to agility. His mentality still hasn't changed. The boy still prioritized Ella's speed because he believed that being fast was just as important as being strong. Now, let's check the new skills. William opened Ella's skill tree with excitement. When Ella gained a level, she received 3 stat points and 2 skill points. William was very picky when it came to Ella's skills. He preferred to choose practicality over being too flashy. The first skill he chose was Mithril Armament. This was the stronger version of the steel armament that Ella had when she was still an ordinary Angorian goat. Mithril Armament. 10 mana points. Make the creature's horn and hooves as hard as Mithril. This skill cannot be upgraded. Skill duration, 30 minutes. Mama, please, test this skill, William pleaded. Me. The color of Ella's horn and hooves changed into a silver blue color. They were like crystals shining in the darkness. It also gave Ella a regal and elegant appeal. William playfully touched his mama Ella's mithril horns. It gave him the feeling of confidence and security. He knew that it would only take a matter of time to clear the goblin crypt with his mama Ella's newfound strength. Chapter 38, The Dungeon Raid Part 2. The second skill that William chose was the skill War Cry. War Cry. 10 mana points. Unleash a rallying cry to increase your own and your allies' stats by 20%. This skill cannot be upgraded. Skill duration, 30 minutes. Ella didn't need William's reminder and immediately used her war cry. No //o// Me. The powerful aura was excluded from her body. The other gloats bleated in acknowledgement as they felt their bodies become stronger. The powerful goat army cleared the entire map in a day. The goats gained 1 level. William gained 2, and Ella gained 7. It was a good start, but William decided to stop their dungeon raid for the time being. He wanted the goats to feel what it was like to work as a team. William planned to take things one step at a time and let the goats get used to their new formation. Also, he felt a bit sad because his main stats could no longer advance. Stats EXP bar. Current EXP, 146,283/146,283. According to the system, his stats gauge needed to ascend to the next level in order to reset, which would allow him to continue to level up. This was similar to the other job classes he had gained, where he needed to choose a means to advance them to a stronger and more powerful class. In order to solve this problem, William needed to visit a temple and pray to his patron god. Then and only then would the experience bar for his stat points reset. Unfortunately, the temples were at least 4 days away from Lant if you were to travel by carriage. Currently, beast tides were rampaging across the land. It was impossible for William to travel to a temple. Even if he could, James wouldn't allow it. The only silver lining was that the shepherd job class could still gain levels because it hadn't reached its level cap. William looked at his current stats and sighed. He silently thanked the beast tide for giving him the opportunity to advance by leaps and bounds. Based on his calculations, it would have taken at least 2 to 3 years to reach his current level. Fortunately, the millennial beast and his lackeys gave William the best opportunity to gain massive experience points in a controlled environment. Race, half-elf. Hit points, 725/725. Mana, 1240/1240. Job class, Shepherd level 30. Subclass, Ice Mage level 40, max. Strength, 22, plus 2. Agility, 35, plus 3. Vitality, 25, plus 2. Intelligence, 60, plus 2. Dexterity, 16, plus 20. Current EXP, 146,283/146,283. Current job EXP, 2,400/11,503. The goats immediately fell asleep once they had returned to the goat pen. Although only an hour had passed in the real world, they had stayed inside the dungeon for a whole day. All of them were very exhausted and William didn't want to push them to their limits. Let's go to sleep as well, Mama Ella. Me. Ella returned to her normal mode and laid down on the piled up hay in the corner of the goat shed. William followed suit and hugged his Mama Ella to sleep. That night, William dreamed of leading a herd of Angorian war ibex to battle against a wolf tide. All the wolves were trampled under their feet and even the centennial and millennial beasts didn't survive the battle. He. William chuckled in his sleep. So many experience points. While William and the rest of the children in Lant were sleeping, the adults were taking turns as night watch. Jekyll, time's up, Marcus said with a smile. Get your beauty sleep. I'll take over the watch. About time, Jekyll replied as he stretched his body. Sean, make sure to bring us freshly baked bread tomorrow. I'm counting on you. Mr. Bond patted Sean's shoulder. I don't mind as long as you pay for it. Sean yawned. Make sure not to fall asleep while on duty. That goes without saying. Mr. Bond patted his chest. If one monster comes, I'll kill one. If a dozen comes, I'll kill a dozen. Relax, those critters won't get past me. The night passed peacefully as the defenders of Lant stood their vigil. Only when the first light of sunrise fell upon the small town, did they hear the shriek of a hawk coming from the east. Finally, James muttered as he gazed at the hawk that was descending from the sky. Everyone was waiting for John's arrival, so they hurried towards the Ainsworth residence to meet him. All of them were eager to hear his report and understand the current situation. Inside the conference room, James was busy placing gemstones on a map that almost occupied half of the round table. The colored gems signified the current conditions of the various villages, towns, and cities in the western side of the Hellan kingdom. James, and the others waited patiently until he finished his task. Even so, some of them were already frowning. They could tell at a glance that almost the entire western region was now in ruins. Dear God, Owen muttered. Such destruction. John heaved a deep sigh as he placed the last gemstone on the map. As you can see, the western region is as good as gone, John reported. The beast tide from the Forbidden Lands came 5 years earlier than expected. Lant faced a wolf tide. The town of Fushia encountered a bear tide, Pran was besieged by harpies, Zanar by hyenas. John listed all the towns that he had seen along the way. According to him, there were almost no survivors from these territories. Blitz and I delved deeper into the kingdom and found traces of the beast tides. It seems that all of them are going to converge to attack Fort Windermere. As expected, James muttered as he stared at the map on the table. Fort Windermere was a fortress that was built to resist the Beast Tide invasion. Usually, the Beast Tides happened every 15 to 20 years. It seemed that something big had happened in the Forbidden Lands that caused the Beast Tide to come earlier. In the past, the Hellan Kingdom had amassed a massive army to clear out the Forbidden Land known as the Strathmore Forest. Unfortunately, they weren't even able to enter the outskirts of the forest due to a powerful restriction. When the genius scholars of the kingdom analyzed this restriction, they were surprised to find out that only those who were 20 years old and below could enter the forest. Because of this, all plans to conquer Strathmore Forest had been put on hold. Since they couldn't invade the source of the problem, they decided to build a fortress that would protect the kingdom from these rampaging beasts. Chapter 39, The Expansion of Lant. John, are you saying that Lant is the only town that survived this disaster? Jekyll asked. Yes, John replied. Lant is the only town that is still standing in the western edges of the Hellan Kingdom. The atmosphere in the room became heavy as everyone finally understood their current predicament. Their eyes fell on James, who was lightly tapping the table with his fingertips. Owen, what do you think will happen after the kingdom deals with the current beast tide? James asked. What else? Owen sneered. Those scummy nobles will fight tooth and nail to gain a foothold in the territories that have lost their owners. They will rain on the sky like vultures and grab every piece of meat that they can find on this ruined land. Frankly, I think we can consider ourselves lucky if they don't come knocking on our doorstep. No greedy scum would miss this opportunity to add lands to their fief. Of course, there is another possibility, Ava commented with a smirk. The king will definitely use this as an opportunity to award lands to those of his knights that have done meritorious service during this crucial period. James looked at the territories that surrounded Lant and made up his mind. Fushia to the north and Zanar to the east, James said after careful consideration. Lant is at the farthest edge of the western region. These two places have been our good neighbors for many years. Since that is the case, we will not allow them to fall into the hands of those greedy nobles. James raised his hand and issued orders. John, take Blitz and raise the flag of Lant in Fushia. From this day onwards, it will be part of our territory. I will send some people to help you gather the dead bodies. We will give them all a proper burial and erect a monument in their name. Yes, sir. John nodded his head and left the room. Marcus, Ava, and Jekyll, go to Zanar and do the same. In the small chance that there are any survivors, make sure to take good care of them. I will also send some people to help later. Haha. I like this plan. Jekyll chuckled. Zanar is a good place to grow wheat. If we secure it, Lant will not have to worry about its food supply. Fushia is known for their silver mines. Ava brushed her hair. The nobles would definitely set their eyes on that one. Well, that will depend on their ability. James sneered. I'd like to see them try. Everyone in the room smiled. They had been living peacefully for so many years. Some of them were itching to beat some stupid nobles to release their pent-up urges. After the meeting had been disbanded, Mordred approached his father to talk more about their expansion. Father, are you sure about this? Mordred asked. The king may not like it. I'm sure that His Majesty has more important matters at hand than dealing with small fries like us. Compared to us taking a few lands on the edges of the western region, he would focus more on how to deal with the current beast tide, James replied. As long as we do not reach his bottom line, I'm sure that he won't mind our shameless attempt to take possession of a land or two during this period. You have a point, father, Mordred rubbed his chin in agreement. Even if we take Fushia and Zanar, there are still plenty of territories that have lost their owners. It will be more than enough to satisfy the nobles. Right? That's why, you don't have to worry about this matter, James commented. Also, it will still take a few months before the other lands are reclaimed. Even the greedy nobles won't be able to rebuild these territories in such a short amount of time. Besides, I feel that this beast tide isn't over yet. Mordred looked at his father in surprise. It's not over yet. The older man shook his head. I'm not sure. I just have a nagging feeling that this beast tide is not as simple as it seems. James walked towards the hill that overlooked the town of Lant. They had lived in this small piece of land for many years. Life here in the countryside was peaceful. Although it didn't have the lively atmosphere of the cities, it was still a wonderful place to spend your days in retirement. Send the messenger birds. It's time to call them back, James ordered. Time for everyone to have a reunion. All of them? Mordred asked. There was a trace of excitement in his voice. James turned his head to look at his son with a smile. All of them? Aunt Anna, shouldn't you be relaxing instead of doing the household chores? William asked. You're pregnant, right? Who said pregnant women can't do chores? Anna lightly pinched William's cheeks. Enough talk. Eat your breakfast. Although you can't go outside the town, you still need to take care of the goats. William smiled and nodded his head. After eating his breakfast, he didn't immediately go to the goat pen. He and his mama Ella decided to take a stroll. William sat on Ella's back as they traveled the familiar roads of their hometown. Along the way they were greeted by a bunch of people. Almost everyone in Lant knew each other. Of course, everyone knew who William was. Since the Ainsworth family was the overseer of Lant, it was impossible for the children and the adults to not know who he was. William watched the children playing on the streets with a smile. He greeted the busy adults carrying wolf pelts, and waved at the old people who were making wolf jerky. Although Lant was a small town, it was filled with smiles and life. The two walked up the ramparts of the town wall and gazed at the distance. The bodies of the centennial and millennial beasts were being dismantled by Mr. Bond. He volunteered to do it alone in order to preserve the quality of the goods. William watched the enthusiastic barber as he worked with a serious expression. According to his grandpa, Aunt Helen would make him a set of clothes made from the pelt of the millennial beast. This set of clothes could be considered on par with first-rate lightweight armor that he could wear for any occasion. For this, William was truly grateful. Mama Ella, I'm glad that we managed to prevent this town from getting destroyed, William said after looking at the scene in front of him. Me. I'm just a bit worried. Me. I'm afraid that the beast tide was just a prelude to something bigger. Me. Fort Windermere. The soldiers manning the fortress walls had grim expressions on their faces as they looked at the beast tide that was slowly, but surely approaching them. This was not the first time that they had experienced a beast tide, but the current one far exceeded their expectations. My lord, it would be best if we ask for reinforcements from the capital, Mont, the vice-general manning the fortress proposed. If we don't receive help soon, I'm afraid that the fortress will be overrun in 2 days. You're right. General Aerith sighed and nodded his head. Send our fastest messenger hawks to the capital. Tell them that we need the Griffin Brigade to assist us in battle. At once, General. The general's aide stepped out of the conference room to execute his superior's order. Aerith left the conference room and made his way to the fortress walls. All the high-ranking officers in Windermere followed behind him. General Aerith stared at his trusted aides and the soldiers who were awaiting his orders. He then raised his fist into the air and made a declaration. No matter what happens, Fort Windermere should never fall. The moment we fail, the Hellan Kingdom will fall into ruins. Our mothers, brothers, sisters, wives, and children will then become the food of these monsters. Do you want this to happen? No. Then fight. General Aerith roared as he unsheathed his sword and pointed it at the beast tide that was slowly approaching the fortress walls. Fight for everything that you hold dear in this world. Let us send these foul monsters to hell. Death to the enemies of the kingdom. Death. Kill them all. Kill. Archers aim. General Aerith ordered. Magicians, prepare your spells. Thousands of archers loaded their bows with arrows and took aim. Hundreds of magicians started to chant their long-range spells. The archers and the magicians focused their attention on the enemies before them. General Aerith watched as the beast tide came within range. He then resolutely thrust his sword forward and gave the order to fire. Fire at will. Thousands of arrows took flight and spells rained down from the fortress walls. The Battle of Fort Windermere had officially begun. Chapter 40, A Stubborn Fool. While the battle at the fortress was underway, John and Blitz had arrived in Fuchsia. After firmly securing the flag of Lant on the highest structure of the destroyed town, he then started to look for survivors. A few hours later, several men from Lant arrived and helped him in his undertaking. Surprisingly, they did find survivors amongst the ruins of Fuchsia. Some had hidden in their cellars, while others buried themselves amongst the dead. After half a day of searching, John and the others were able to rescue over 100 people. These were the last remnants of Fuchsia. A town which once housed thousands of people now lay in ruins. Uncle John? Is that you? A young man in his early 20s stepped forward. Cedric. John looked at the young man in surprise. Where is your father? Did he also survive? Cedric was the son of the mayor of Fuchsia. Since Fuchsia and Lant were basically neighbors, the two had a good relationship with each other. James and Cedric's father, Sabas, were good friends. Cedric teared up when he remembered how his father pushed him and his sister towards the cellar of their house. Sabas ordered them to wait for his return. Cedric knew that his father didn't want them to die, so he obeyed and took care of his sister as they hid in the cellar waiting for his return. I don't know if father is dead or alive, Cedric said after regaining his composure. Only my sister and I are left of our family. John sighed and hugged the young man. He then patted his back. Your father is a brave man. He will live through you and never be forgotten. The survivors of Fuchsia looked at the scene and teared up. Some of them wailed in despair at the death of their loved ones, while others looked at the ruins with a tinge of helplessness. All of them knew that it was impossible for them to rebuild the town on their own. If Fuchsia was to rise again, they needed help in more ways than one. It was then when a young beautiful girl, who seemed to be around 14 years old, stood beside John and Cedric. She was the only daughter of Sabas and Cedric's younger sister, Leah. Her long midnight blue hair rested behind her back and her clear blue eyes looked at John with hope. Uncle John, what is going to happen to us? Leah asked. Did Uncle James send you? Yes. John nodded his head. We came here to place Fuchsia under our protection. Uncle, do you mean that, from this day onwards, Fuchsia is now a part of Lant? Leah asked. Leah. Stop being disrespectful to Uncle John. Cedric snapped. Now is not the time to talk about these things. You are wrong, brother, Leah replied. There is no better time to discuss the ownership of Fuchsia than now. Since Uncle John is here, it means that Lord Ainsworth has no intention of letting the other nobles stake their claim on Fuchsia. For me, this is a good thing. At least, Lord Ainsworth is a good person. John was shocked by Leah's calm and rational explanation. He never thought that a 14-year-old girl would be capable of analyzing the current situation and give her views on the matter. Not only that, she was also able to tell John face to face that she was aware of James' plan for expansion. Is this true, Uncle John? Cedric asked. Does Lord Ainsworth intend to take over Fuchsia? Yes, John answered honestly. As for the details, it would be best if the two of you meet him. I'm sure that he will be more than happy to know that the two of you are still alive. For now, let's wait for the wagons coming from Lant. Why should we leave? Cedric asked. Isn't the beast tide over? Not by a long shot, John replied. The last time I saw the beast tide, they were converging to attack the fortress of Windermere. Until they have been annihilated, there is no safe place in the western region except the town of Lant. Except the town of Lant? Leah asked. Did Lant also experience the beast tide? Yes. How did you manage to survive? You will know when you get there. For now, I advise all of you to rest. We can't stay here for long. A messenger bird landed at the Ainsworth residence. Sabas, you're such a stubborn fool. James felt sad as he read the letter. You should have stayed with your son and daughter in the cellar or your house. Mordred, who was seated beside his father's side. Sabas and him were also good friends and he really liked the mayor's upright and straightforward attitude. Call William, James said after reading the letter. Tell him to take his goats to Fuchsia and assist in the evacuation. Also, tell the people at the town hall to prepare beds for the survivors. Father, can we let Cedric and Leah stay in the residence? Mordred inquired. Of course, James answered. Leah and Cedric can be considered as my niece and nephew. It is only proper that we take care of them. Understood. Mordred nodded his head and left the room. 2 hours later, 20 wagons departed from the town of Lant. William rode on Ella's back while his Team Alpha and Team Omega guarded the wagons on both sides. The journey between Lant and Fuchsia usually took 2 hours by carriage. When William and the rest arrived in Fuchsia, the sun was already at its zenith. William, over here. John waved and called out to the boy who was seated on top of the Angorian goat. William was the only boy in Lant who used a goat as his mount. Although no one questioned it, most of them found it funny. Uncle John, William greeted the older man with a smile. I heard that brother Cedric and sister Leah are among the survivors. Where are they right now? No//O/. William had met Cedric and Leah many times in the past. Every year, there was a harvest festival that was celebrated within the western region. James had dragged William and Matthew to these festivals in order to let them mingle with the daughters of his friends. If not for the fact that William already had a fiancée, James would have definitely played matchmaker for him. Since William was off limits, Matthew became James' target. He even pestered Sabas to matchmake Leah to Matthew when his cousin was only 12 years old. Of course, Sabas just laughed it off and even reprimanded James that he shouldn't interfere in the affairs of the children. For him, love was something that shouldn't be forced. With that said, he also didn't mind if Leah and Matthew were to become a couple. As long as both of their feelings were mutual, then he would definitely give them his blessing. Cedric and Leah are in their house, or what remains of their house. James sighed. They are trying to salvage the things that they can salvage. It would be best if we leave them alone for the time being. William nodded his head in understanding. Cedric and Leah had just lost their father. Their mother had passed away after giving birth to Leah. In this world, only the two of them remained in their family. An hour later, Cedric and Leah arrived at the town plaza. Both of them had sad expressions because they didn't see their father among the dead in their household. Cedric was still clinging to the small hope that their father had survived. Leah, on the other hand, had already accepted the reality. Little William, you still look as stupid as ever, Leah said with a smile. Big sister, you're still as beautiful as ever, William replied. You've matured a bit. In the past, you would always retort when I call you stupid. Big sister, a boy that is as handsome as me is not that petty. Leah gave a wry smile as she looked at the handsome boy seated on top of the Angorian goat. She was fond of William because he was fun to tease. However, she felt that the current him seemed to be more mature compared to the stupid boy that had visited Fuchsia a year ago. Ella, you're doing well, I presume? Leah asked the Angorian goat with a smile. Me? That's good to hear. Leah couldn't understand goat language. However, that didn't stop her from trying to communicate with Ella. Cedric, on the other hand, only gave William a brief nod before talking to John about important matters. He felt that there was a need to negotiate the ownership of Fuchsia since it was a town that had been governed by their family for many years. William and Leah heard Cedric's words, because the older boy didn't try to hide it from them. John just smiled and kept on nodding his head. He understood what Cedric was trying to say. However, understanding and agreeing were two different things. As for who would govern Fuchsia in the future, James, Cedric, and Leah needed to have a proper discussion in order to smooth out the details of their cooperation.